Well, wish you all a Merry Christmas before we begin. Thank you for being with us today. We have a rather interesting case we're going to talk about, and it involves Tanya Demirhan and her husband, Atilla. They own the Antico wood-fired pizzeria on South Florida Avenue in Lakeland. And here's what occurred. We received information last Thursday afternoon that Tanya wanted her husband, Atilla, gone forever, dead. And as a result of that, we made arrangements to give our undercover operative's phone number to Tanya to call directly. And that's what happened. Within minutes, literally minutes, of Tanya receiving the undercover deputy's phone number, she called. And of course our detective said, listen, I don't talk business on the phone, but we'll need to meet. As a result, early on Friday morning, Tanya met with the hitman, who was our undercover detective, at 7:30 in the morning at Banana Lake Park, which is off Clubhouse Road in South Lakeland. And she told him, she said, I want my husband gone forever. So they had a conversation and they agreed upon $10,000. $10,000 was what the hit was going to cost. And she said, well, I've got to tell you that I don't have the cash, but I have title to 4 vehicles, so I can barter by providing 1 or 2 of the vehicles, whatever accounts, up to $10,000. So our hitman said, well, I need to know what your husband looks like. She leaves. She goes back to the residence where her husband is sitting in his recliner drinking his morning coffee. And she takes pictures of him. And then she takes a selfie with him in order to provide that to the hitman, which is obviously our detective. Upon taking the pictures, he leaves about 9:20 on Saturday morning to go to work. At 9:45, she meets with our undercover detective again. In possession, she has a title to the vehicle. And that is the vehicle you see right there, the pizza delivery truck. In addition to that, my undercover detective, acting as the hitman, says, well, I'd like for you to sign a promissory note. And he just happened to have one made up. And he had her write her name in here. I, Tanya, promise to pay a total of $10,000. Such payment may be made in cash or transfer of vehicles. Payment will be made within 10 days of service. And Tanya signed it and dated it. Now, folks, I've been involved in a lot of investigations that deals with people looking for someone to kill their loved one. I've never in my life ever heard of anybody that was silly enough to sign a note, but she did. So she signed a $10,000 note agreeing to pay for the demise of her husband. So let's get this right. She's sitting in the car outside of her house with a hitman. She signed the note. She's provided the title. And as she started to leave, this was interesting. She said, as she started to leave the vehicle, well, first off, let me back up before she left the vehicle. She provides the note. The business is done. And she said, look, I want Atilla killed as soon as possible. And she wanted him killed immediately, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. She said, because the pizza shop closes for Christmas and I want him out of here. So Tanya asked the undercover deputy, she said, by the way, I'm Turkish and I'm from Turkey, but how do American women react to such things as their husband dying? Should I cry? And the detective told me I was kind of taken back by that. And I said, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, that's what I'd do. I'd cry. And so she said, oh, by the way, I've got another question. should I take his body back to Turkey? And he says, well, that would probably be a good thing, take his body back to Turkey. And then as she left the undercover vehicle, Tanya smiled and said, looked at the hitman and said, now go have fun, because I'm going to have fun and I'm going to live my life. And she closed the door and off she walked. Well, we stopped Attila after he left the house, and while all this was going on, we followed him and we stopped him down at the bank. And we told him what occurred. He was in absolute shock. He couldn't believe it. And he said, but you know, for the last 2 years, she's treated me really, really mean. And then during the last 10 days, she's been just really, really nice to me. I suppose that's what you should be just before you have your husband killed, is really nice to him. So now understand all these moving parts. Now we're going to go back to the house to where Tanya is, and we see that she's already jumped in a car and left. So we have deputies stop the vehicle, and we said, look, we'd like for you to come down to our Southwest District Station. We've got some really bad news to share with you. And she said, sure. So she went down to the station with us, and she said, we've got some really bad news. Your husband's been murdered. He's been shot at a local bank as he went up to a local bank. Tanya then put on this incredibly dramatic, emotional appeal and display. All, I might add, without any tears at all. And she still looks somewhat perplexed as we have this picture of her here. So when we confronted her and said, look, okay, the deal's off, your husband's really alive, and you've hired a hitman to kill your husband, she said, I don't know what you're talking about. So we showed her note. And she said, I signed that note for my husband yesterday because he said he needed to trade the car in because we were in debt. I don't know anything about a hitman. So then our detective said, look, I can tell you that you signed this note, and he went through the circumstances, and she said, I don't know anything about that. Now, she's not crying at all. She's not saying, wait a minute, why are you wearing me out? I mean, my husband's just murdered, and now you're accusing me of murdering him? Instead, she has answers for everything. So we bring the undercover detective in, and he sits down wearing the same exact clothes as when they made the deal not so many minutes beforehand. She looked at that guy and she says, I've never seen him in my life. I don't know who he is. So he pulled out his identification and showed that he was a detective with the sheriff's office. She says, I have never seen him in my life. I don't know who he is. I didn't make any deals. Why would I want my husband killed? It's remarkable. We actually have those video clips for you to see. Obviously, we have locked her up, and we've locked her up for solicitation to commit first-degree murder. Her husband is alive and well. Her child is well. And the business here, I guess it's open for business. However, she's going to have a very difficult time running that business from the county jail. Any questions?
Yeah, what would drive her to do something like this?
She said he was mean to her, that she gave a lot of excuses about how mean he was, but we checked. There's never been any domestic violence calls at the house.
This is after she was confronted?
This was after she was confronted.
Did she admit to it then? Or,
She admitted that he was just mean, and she just wanted to be rid of him. She was tired of him.
She still claims that she never...
Now, after she's arrested, she doesn't know why we would be arresting her for this. She has no idea. This was absolutely a unique circumstance. And quite frankly, we appreciate the fact that this person came forward, and when this person came to us, he said, look, I feel real bad about this. But she said if something didn't happen quick, she had some chemicals in the garage to take care of him with. And we took that to mean that she was going to poison him. So if he wasn't out of the way quick, then we were afraid that she would poison him. That's why our detectives, who did a fantastic job on this case, said, hey, we've got to move this thing along really quickly. We could have laid out a much more elaborate set of circumstances if we had the time. But the reality is we were afraid that she was going to poison the guy before we could get there and save his life.
Have you ever seen anybody more eager and an easier person to bring down than something like that?
Oh no, and what really created a lot of levity for all the detectives is how stone-faced she was when we're there with a note she just signed, the undercover detective she just made the deal with, the undercover detective she said, now you go have fun, meaning to killing her husband, and I'm going to have fun and live my life. She absolutely, unequivocally looked us all in the eye, all of the detectives, and said, I don't know what you're talking about, even though we had the video and the audio of all of this.
Did she ever say he beat her or just mean?
Never said that he beat her, and we find no evidence of that.
Did this person that came forward, was it like an everyday person? Was it someone that knew the couple?
Somebody who knew them. I mean, there's no secret here but he cared and was afraid that if he didn't tell us, she was going to kill him herself. So I'm certain that he thought about this for some period of time because he thought, well, she wants somebody to kill him, but she said if somebody didn't kill him soon, she had some chemicals in the house that she would take care of it. So he thought, well, I tell someone and I can keep him alive. If I don't tell someone, she's going to kill him herself if she can't find someone else to kill him.
So this friend, you guys told this friend to go back to her and tell her, hey, I found this hitman for you, here's his number?
That's correct. She provided Tanya with a hitman's phone number, and it was just minutes, just like immediately.
Was it, you said he before, was it a man or a woman?
I'm not sure if it was a man or a woman. It was a friend.
Okay, a friend.
But with much trepidation, this person said, I hate to do this, but I'm afraid Attila's going to be dead if I don't. So at the end of the day, we see these cases periodically. It's not the first one we've made, and I'm certain it won't be the last one we've made. But let me give some sound advice. If you don't like your husband or your wife or your significant other, just leave them. Seek a divorce. Separate yourself. But don't kill them. That's an ugly thing to do, especially on the eve of Christmas. But she wanted him gone by Christmas Day. I mean, she wanted him gone last weekend. And we made sure that she won't have to worry about seeing him on Christmas because she's in the jail and he's alive and well at home with his family.
What's the penalty? Like, how long can she realistically be locked up?
Is that a first-degree felony? 15 years, 15 to 30. I sure wouldn't want to be around her after this anyway. And I can tell you, she tells a convincing story. But to quote the undercover detective, she was gleeful as she started to get out of the car after the note was signed and the down payment was provided in the form of the title to the pizza truck. Now, I don't know what in the world we do with a pizza truck of a dead guy, but she wasn't worried about that either.
Who owns that truck now?
Technically, she still owns it on paper. She owns the business. She owns everything on paper. But at the end of the day, we can seize that because it's her property. I don't know if we have seized it, but you know, that's not something that we would want to do because I mean, he's the victim here. Now, if it turns out that she tries to barter with that, then obviously we can take it to keep her from having it and legally seize it. But we certainly don't want to stop him from being able to conduct business and because he's got to live. We don't want him victimized in this thing. But she owns it all. She owns the business that's in her name. The vehicles are in her name. And
Do you
he,
know how involved he was in the business?
he was going to work. He ran the business.
There wasn't another job? That
I understand, and you'll have to take this with, there may be more details, that apparently at some point in the past he might have had some economic problems that caused him not to be able to have the stuff in his name, so she had it in her name. But it was their business, and he worked in it every day, in fact. But the irony of it to us, I mean, with, you know, this lady was, you know, she understood a sense of urgency, because from 7:30 for the first meeting to going back to the house to getting pictures of him sitting in his chair with his coffee and taking selfies with him so that the hitman would know who the target was, to meeting. He leaves the house at 9:20 to go to work. At 9:40, she's meeting with the guy, the undercover, the hitman, to give him the photographs and sign the note and provide the title. I mean, she was ready for business to happen right now. And quite frankly, our great detectives operated with a sense of urgency and got her in jail before she could get around to killing him, which was our real concern.
Does the couple have any kids?
There's at least one child in common.
Is that a son or a daughter?
Son, 16-year-old son. They've been married for quite some time, 16 years.
If there was a college-age kid at the house as well, do you know if there's another child that might be his or hers? Or?
I think he had some children by another relationship prior to marrying them. Okay. Thank you very much.